Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Autopsy with Maddee P. I'm your host, Maddee P. Girl. What is cracking, queen? I missed you too. That is so sweet. I don't know why I always tell you that I miss you, but I do. Anywho, this week I learned some sweet news, guys. This podcast reaches 7 countries. I'll take it. Number 2 being Australia. I'll take it. And you know what this shows you? To follow your dreams and not give a fuck who's watching, what anybody thinks, and what anybody's saying. Because it really doesn't fucking matter. Because I feel like nobody fucking watches this shit, but I don't facilitate that thought. You know, it's just like, who gives a fuck? I do this for me because I love to do it and because I want to help other people. Period. Okay? And I needed answers back then that I couldn't find. And I want people to have somewhere to find shit out and be honest about their sobriety and their healing journey. So I just thought that was fun. We are number 1 podcast for 17 people, which sounds small, but to me, that's an accomplishment, you know? So keep doing shit, even if it's corny and cringe and vulnerable and everyone on the internet can see you, because it doesn't fucking matter. Nothing matters but you, bitch. Period. Okay. Thanks, guys, for listening. So I guess I should start by warning you, I am back on antibiotics again. And we all know I get a little loopy. I get a little nonsensical whenever. Y'all remember the doxycycline era? I read a comment the other day. And this bitch was like, don't forget to eat. It burned a hole in my esophagus. Hey, why the fuck are you giving me that then? Why are you handing me something that's going to burn my esophagus? It was for the skin though, so I was willing. So yeah, we're back on the antibiotic thing and I keep having to eat with it and I keep forgetting. And then I get a little loopy. So is what it is. Don't know if my body can handle it. The amount of fucking antibiotics I'm on. I won't talk about it. I have a lot to say about that and I'm just not going to say it because it's boring. So we'll do a few warm-ups today. And if I get a little crazy and I got that look in my eye, you know what the fuck is up. And I'm having a coffee, so you know what the fuck is up. Now, first thing, Big Blue is pregnant. That's insane news. Big Blue, Deep Blue, Big Blue is the biggest great white shark in general, I guess aside from like a Greenland shark or whatever. And what other mysteries lie beneath, mind you. She is the largest and she's pregs, girl. She looking meaty. She's looking meaty. I know the motherfuckers want her for soup and they cannot have her. And there was some controversy surrounding her because people were swimming, researchers, I guess. I don't know if it was for fun or research. It looked for fun. Let's be real. We saw your Instagram reel. It looked for fun. Swimming all up in her shit. And I'm like, y'all crazy. Because honestly, I would shark dive. I want to shark dive. I want to be close to the sharks. Right next to one of the biggest known apex predators on the planet. Back it the fuck up, sweetie. Terry, put it in reverse, because what the fuck are you doing that close? And I am on the side of like, can we let the wild be the wild? There's only so much left. You know, is your Instagram reel that important? The sass, the antibiotic sass. So that's my update on Big Blue. She's fucking beautiful. And I feel like my favorite thing about sharks is like looking at their scars and being like, what happened? You know, that fight was gnarly as fuck. Whatever she had going on, she's got years of scarring. And I love seeing a shark like that. There was one where it's like jaw was hanging out and like that motherfucker, you know, is nasty in battle. Apex. Speaking of Apex, I got a tattoo, guys, of a alligator. We all know I love alligators. I don't know if I can show you right now. Can I? There she go. Hey. These are for my girls down under. My Irwin head babes. That's her. Moving on. I don't have a ton of warm-ups today because apparently I wrote a 5-page long fucking podcast. So what's next? New vocal stim unlocked. Impish or admirable. Moving on. Like, come on. Watch The Office. I've been saying it. Are you impish or are you admirable? Hopefully I stop saying it soon because it makes me want to crawl into a hole. Suffocate myself. Final warm up for the day. Do you guys like how short I've been keeping these? I haven't been timing. I need to time myself because sometimes I just talk too damn much. We're starting now. What has it been? Like 10 minutes? Okay. So someone went missing after going into Dracula's castle. Love it. Not for the kid, but love it. So there's like audio of him speaking to, can I like actually think for once in my life? Not research. What the fuck am I trying to say? Recovery. People looking for him. The ops trying to find him. And he didn't go missing around the castle. He went missing once he went back in. And he had to go back in because he needed a moment to rest and like not be out in the cold. He had a tent. He had all types of shit on him. But he goes missing after he goes back in. Now that I'm talking about it, I'm like, I probably should have researched this. That was true. But I was looking into it. That's some shit right there. And I love hearing vampire news, honestly. Like, vampire is one of those ones, like, y'all know, I'm a realist, but I teeter. I dabble in the realm of conspiracy. And a lot of them, I'm like, yeah, no way it's real. A vampire, though? I mean, like, not in the way we know it. Not in the trilogy, Twilight bullshit. But the potential, I think, does exist. And it's kind of got me excited. But rip. First and foremost. And I don't want to make a joke of somebody's death, but like, come on. You know, when I go out, I hope it's some shit like that. That's cool. Should I also say stuff like that? I don't know. I'm not controlling too much of what comes out of my mouth on here. And you're not going to stop me. So I edit this. Thanks. Moving on. This week, we're kind of going back to our old autopsy ways. I started this when I was 6 months sober. And it was a lot of exploratory situations of my own mind and my own gut and my healing journey, if you will. And, you know, I got really healthy. Let me just brag real quick. I got really healthy mentally. And so our programming went towards more kind of niche or other subjects that I felt like people might need help with because I didn't need it as much. I always need help, mind you. But we are reassessing our insides today. And I am going to share some things about myself that I have been feeling / facing recently. So this is kind of a throwback to me analyzing my thoughts and my feelings, which I found I think helps you guys. Me sharing my own shit. So this will have to do with relapse dreams. That's kind of the main point of this right now, I guess. But it's kind of a life update at the same time. So, as you all know, I come here and I tell you how much I love sobriety. And that is the fucking truth. But I would be lying if I said that I do not struggle with alcoholic ideas and thoughts and feelings. But now I can just feel them and appreciate them for what they are and come here, go to my sponsor, analyze myself and my life. My growth has never been linear, which is like a cheesy thing to say. I know a lot of people know that about themselves and about healing journeys, but sometimes the universe beckons me into a new stage of my life, which I can't lie to you, I can be rather reluctant and stubborn at times about that. I know I seem very open-minded and ready to move forward. That's like my new tick on here. I get, but sometimes I just need a little push. And in jumping from like one zone of sobriety to the next, I think it's important to pad it somewhat in a little bit of comfort because it allows me balance and peace as I stride to the next part of my life. And what that does is it hinders me from falling into chaos during the times where I'm jumping from one zone to the next and there's this ether of me kind of hanging and flying forward. I lived in chaos. This is where I thrived for most of my life. And sometimes, I can't lie, those patterns kind of remain. Or chaos strikes, or I'm in the middle of something and I just want to partake, if you will. But now there is a level of padding that exists in me to hinder me from partaking in such activities, because now those spaces of ether are not labeled as free fall and loneliness and confusion the way that they used to be. Now I rely on peace to guide my gut. Sometimes I have to get really quiet to hear that. I get lost in what's going on, and Maddie needs to like go and figure out what the fuck is happening, instead of taking a second and understanding that peace and regulation is going to take me where I need to go. And that comes with like small doses of fear, honestly, in combination with confidence. And I mean both confidence, yes, in myself, but also in the fact of the future, the fact that I'm abundant, I'm protected, and I'm guided to the right place. And there is a comfort in that is a great gift to me, where now I can trust abundance and what's to come. I think sometimes that small dose of fear can be a tricky situation for myself, because I also used to like be scared of everything, and that caused me to jump right into things because I was a chaos driven person. And now it's important to label fear as almost like an opportunity, and that when fear arises, it's often a healthy fear in my life. I'm not outrunning things the way I used to be. And fear to me used to be very real because there was shit that I should be fucking afraid of. And that's not the case anymore. It's a gentle push and a gentle nudge. And I don't know, recently, I feel like this is kind of like making me sound crazy and delusional, but recently I've had to relabel fear as such. Because I don't get those, as you all know, I worked on my anxiety. I don't get those feelings in my gut or like my body like shaking and going into like that mode anymore. And so when I do, I get elected with this feeling of something that I'm not supposed to have. And that's not the way that fear needs to be labeled in my mind. Fear is a beckon to me now and a call to something greater. Do I sound like a nut today? So y'all have obviously seen my ebbs and flows, because I make it a point to come here to talk to you about them, because I think they are super important. And that's what like my life updates are often based in, is something has changed. And there's this place in my life that exists now where my days are the same, my goals are the same, whether that's physically, mentally, this fucking podcast, whatever it is, but my mental changes. And because of that pattern, it keeps me from going into a burnout mode. It keeps me determined. And I think it's important to talk about, because being stagnant is where we spiritually die. That's where burnout takes place. And it's important to keep your spirituality on the radar. And that's something I learned for myself a long time ago. And when I start to feel stagnant like that, little pieces of me die, because I need to be not elected. Why do I keep using that word today? The fuck? I need to be. Sometimes I forget words and I don't understand it. Enticed? It's going to bother me. Enriched? I don't know. Okay, I need some excitement. I need life to be fun. I need it to be new, and I need it to be exciting, but I need it with these guidelines and this nurturing place. That's where I truly get to grow. So yeah, once again, I'm beckoning forward, y'all. Beckoning forward. This push has been a little bit stronger, I think, because I got into a really good rhythm and a really good place of my life. And I was starting to feel a little bit of burnout, and I don't like that feeling, because I like the way my life is. Am I repeating myself? I don't know. But it doesn't matter if I like where I am in my life. It doesn't matter if everything feels at peace and everything feels good, because I gave my life up. My life is not of me anymore. That's not how I live, and that's not how the terms are. So all of this is not up to me. Changing and ebbing and flowing and choosing to follow the fear, to follow what's next, that shit isn't up to me. I'm not of my own doing anymore. And I think that's a really important way to label my sobriety to you today. I think you label it as you want, but that was a really important role in my life, to understand that I don't have fucking control, period. I don't have control. And that is something I have to look in the face all the time and be reminded of. So now we're going to get a little bit into the relapse dreams, okay? I am talking about this today because I had one. I had a relapse dream, y'all. And I have not had one in a long ass fucking time. The last time that I had a relapse dream was the one I told you about, where I threw out the booze in the dream and then I did not have one. And I was so proud. I felt like my subconscious had accepted this new way of life, that sobriety was truly what was best for me. And the questions had kind of like subsided a little bit. I'm not going to bore you with the dream, or I hate when people tell me their fucking dreams. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. And I'm not going to bore you too much with the specifics necessarily of the dream, but I do want to show you how I handled them, because my dreams are extremely realistic. Extremely. And they do impede my day. And it did impede my day. And I think those relapse dreams feel like something that we should just like compartmentalize and move on from. And I think that obviously to some degree is the answer, but I think it's important we talk about it. Of course it is. Of course Maddie thinks it's important to talk about. And I do think they do have a lot to offer and or can cause damage. Okay, so essentially, short story, I drank on vacation. I was actually down under. Is that the theme today? Why does Australia keep occurring in my life? I don't understand. But I drank one night on vacation and then continued to drink throughout the entire vacation. And even in my dream, I said that like I missed being sober and that I didn't like being drunk the first night. Even in my dream, I knew I was hiding the guilt. And it's this guilt that it's like the truth that after all this time of being sober, I still have thoughts and feelings like that. And that has always been labeled as guilt to me, which isn't realistic because I have a disease. If you're here and you're an alcoholic, you have a disease, and this is the way that our brain works. And it's just not reasonable to feel that way, to feel guilt over it. The only reasonable response to any of this is acceptance. Even going back out would be tainted for me now. And we've talked about that. And it's this feeling in the truth of moving forward. And that is the only light that we can paint the situation in, is a sense of moving forward versus the sense of going back. Otherwise, like if I don't paint it like that, then I just feel trapped between the truth of the matter and this feeling that I want it again. And it is a way of not giving up that I have never known before, where it's like built into me. It's etched into my soul. It's like the only truth that fucking matters. So in my relapse dreams, there's always a few common themes. There's basically two main ones. And the main one is that I can't control it. And in the dream, I am feverishly searching for the next drink. It feels so real. It feels the exact same way that it did in my actual alcoholism. The second is that I feel ostracized. I can't socialize, and I feel like I can't enjoy my time. What this shows me is that it's just further proof that I am more normal sober, and that whether I want to accept it or not, I yearn for connection. It is a truth of my addiction. Addiction will always be the opposite of connection. It's a symptom and it's a truth of my recovery. I think that was always hard for me to understand because I could connect drunk, right? I was a party girl, y'all. Aristocrat, if you will. I don't know if that's the right word. But I was a little social butterfly. And it was hard for me to accept that I needed connection because I had it all this time. But I didn't have true connection. Not in the way that I understand now. Whenever you spoke to me, there is something else going on in my brain. That I am a different person and I am just kind of like talking to you to fucking talk or to try to get rid of my thoughts or whatever, but I don't know you and you don't know me. And it's as simple as that. It'll always be that way when I'm drunk. And I know that because I feel that in my dreams now. Second that I pick up a drink, I know is the second that second Maddie comes back into play, where you're speaking to me and I have no idea what the fuck you're saying. And what that does is that takes the moment and all that I've learned completely out the window. I'm not in the moment anymore. I'm not enjoying shit. Being present is a beautiful gift that I have been rewarded. Being present is what allowed me to have true connection, where I feel for people, where I see them, where I truly feel united with humanity. And that is an opportunity that drinking will always take away from me. And I don't have to drink to know that to be the truth. And I think obviously I see that in many facets of my life, but it is proof in the dreams because I can feel that. And that was a monster that I don't know anymore, which is a fucking blessing. That when people speak to me, I'm listening to them. And when I have something to say, I say it back to them. I don't try to be something that I'm not. I don't try to appease to the person the way that I used to, where when I'm speaking to them, I'm trying to say something that they like and I fucking hate the person, or I don't even want to be in a conversation with them in the first place. So I wanted to show you how I analyze these dreams, but even more how I analyze the feeling that I wake up with, because that's more important. Because the way that I analyze this, these are not my waking thoughts. This is not how I feel going through life. And it's super important that we don't analyze these relapse dreams like that, because it's not fucking true. And I had been talking about recovery for like multiple days pretty intensely. And in terms, I'm always talking about fucking recovery. I sit here and do this and I go to meetings. But my personal story, which doesn't always get brought up, and it happened to be brought up like a few instances kind of back to back. And that's what triggered this. Not because I feel alone. Not because I feel this strange guilt inside of me. Not because I did something wrong. But because simply that is how my brain works. So I'm not deep diving into the analytics of what actually happened in this dream, because it's not realistic. And we live in a realistic world right now. I wanted to make that point that like your subconscious is not always screaming something at you. And to overanalyze and rewrite it as your subconscious is trying to say something it's fucking not. And I say that because I personally am a victim of that, especially in early recovery. I was like looking for answers, and my brain would tell me this shit that like, it just caused stress. It just caused me to stress, and it wasn't realistic. Now, how I can analyze this shit is that it is proof of my sobriety working, that I made the right choice to be sober. Like, just maybe in my center of myself, I know right from wrong. Because in that dream, what I wanted was to be sober again. I didn't feel fucking good. And I know in my gut, when I'm traveling through the ether, that what is right is this here. And that's proof of that all working in me. And that's how I wanted to analyze. And again, it's me showing the way that we flip things around. When things feel uncomfortable, things feel strange to us, we flip them. And maybe that's putting a positive spin on things and looking for the truth in everything. And the truth is positive most of the time. The truth of stuff is us being able to change our perspective. Even in my dreams where drinking, the only place that drinking can be painted in a different way for me, not the truth of what drinking is in my waking life, it's still fucking horrible. And I am either way left with guilt and sadness and pain. And I think that's a good, honest truth and a good flip of a way for me to see that no matter what, in dreams, in all of my wishes, it still would never be the same. And what I have to accept is my brain the way it is. Always some type of fucking mess in my dreams. And I think to me, at least in active use, messes felt really permanent. And it's kind of like trying to clean up a mess with a wet fucking mop. That's how it always felt. It makes me my reaction, I'm like, and I love seeing it painted in this way. Again, not only because the truth we discussed earlier, that the only thing that matters is moving forward, but that's something that has to be etched in me. Both the proof of only moving forward, continuously showing up in my life, and the truth of drinking. Both of those things need to be etched in me in a way that surpasses my waking life. In a way that my subconscious is telling me the fucking truth. Now, just because I know that I didn't drink, and I know the truth that my brain just sometimes comes up with things, that doesn't mean that I am not left with feelings waking up. We know that even though those thoughts aren't mine, I can still feel things. And there is a balance of what I'm allowed to feel and what I need to analyze, and what I can write off as just some fucking weird neural pathway bullshit that can get put down the drain and called for another day. And there's a balance that I think exists in how I'm about to explain how I analyzed it. Because I did have overwhelming feelings the next day. I honestly did have a moment. I don't want to word this bad and get anybody worried about me, but I did have a moment of rashly over romanticizing, is what I'll say, is partaking in the feeling that it had left me with. Not necessarily saying that I'm going to go drink and thinking about it, but partaking in the emotion it left, where I kind of missed it for a second. And I thought about what it would be like just upon awakening before kind of all the analysis took place. And honestly, when it comes to those rash feelings where I think about it and I romanticize it, and they're few and far between, but that is one instance where I fucking ignore it. Truly. Because facilitating a thought to grow is not the way that I'm going to handle my sobriety. And I know that putting those walls up in that certain way has allowed me to grow and stay sober. Whether I think that might be the healthiest thing or not, I will ignore it and fucking distract myself. I will bottle it up and move on. Again, I don't know if that's the healthiest thing, but it has kept me fucking sober. And that is how I typically handle my relapse streams. They happen and I'm like, it's over. It's done. And I think this one just struck because I hadn't felt that way waking up in a long time. I think it's just dangerous territory to be in a romanticizing state. And I talked about this with the way that I felt about when I used to think more about drinking and going back. It was like in this rash, like kamikaze sort of way where I'm not sitting there all day mulling over the fact, but like when you are like driving, you're like, I could just crash this car. It was like that. Like my car could just fly into that bar and we call it a day. And it was like nothing had happened to me. There was no like trigger that occurred. It just fucking happened. That's what I am afraid of. That's the shit I don't like. And I think we don't analyze those rash kind of things that happen because we write it off as like, what the fuck was that? Same as when we talked about mental health with suicidal thoughts. Like, no one talks about it because they haven't, like, that's not me though. Like, what the fuck was that? But it's real and your brain thought it. And I personally take those seriously, especially since Allie's death, since my own suicidal bouts and things like that. Those rash romanticizations lead us down a road that is just dangerous territory. And that is something that is personal, I think, for me. I think the way that everyone handles the situation and goes about stuff is very different. And sometimes those rash thoughts to people simply aren't theirs. But I know deep down that some of mine belong to me and that I spit them out. I just know it. I can feel when it's me. And there's like this freak out that exists in me that I know all too well and I learned about through healing on purpose because I want to be able to call her out because I want to be safe. First and foremost, I want to be safe. Honestly, like combating those thoughts and having that kind of wall up where I stop myself in the facilitation of growth it can be a full-time job. But the only difference is that is my only fucking job. In those moments, that is what matters. That is what comes first. Protection. Protection. And it's like this at all cost situation that kind of like reoccurs sometimes where everything stops and we tend to our recovery. And that's exactly what those thoughts made me feel. I'm not being real if I pretend that those thoughts aren't happening to me, that I didn't just feel them. But now I choose to seek help and I don't dive into them alone ever. And there's a balance of that where I can be introspective and I can choose to analyze some things on my own safely, but I also need to call on other people. And I think that's an important point to make as somebody like myself who always had these walls up where people were not allowed in. And I'm not going to tell you the truth of what I feel. I might tell you some bullshit to get you off my back, but I'm not going to tell you the truth. And I tend to do exploration of self alone. And some of that is good and some of that is bad. But I wanted to show you the balance that does exist in my life now where I do get to do some of it alone. And there is an introspection that takes place, but I never just do that. Because that's where like romanticizing in this territory kind of exists. And I think it's a good way to make healing more comfortable for people because it's so uncomfortable to walk into a situation where you now have to fucking talk about everything. For people, most of us did not. And there was a reason that we fucking drank and it was to not talk about it. And I think there needs to be a comfortable space that exists that you can still do some of that on your own. And that there is like, it's a slowly taking down those walls. It doesn't have to be, I talk about all my shit immediately. I call my sponsor, I freak out and do all of this. I can somewhat behave in the way that I used to while I'm growing. Because that takes time. And now that's not something I kind of just immediately call people and I immediately go on my way. But that was after months and months of learning how to do that, of how to walk on my own and how to be comfortable with exposing my actual thoughts and what I'm actually thinking and my ideas. And I can't also pretend that to some degree I don't have moments where I yearn for my past life. And it's absolutely ridiculous. I think it's clear I don't actually want that. But I wanted that to be clearly, that type of vulnerability to be clearly represented here today. Because I always hear people talking about like, oh, I don't even think about drinking anymore. People that are in recovery. Yes, the fuck you do. You do. And if you don't, that's fucking amazing. But I think it deters people from actually healing and speaking out and being vulnerable. Because to me, a lot of sobriety is speaking the fuck up. And that's why I do come on here and I do share, make it a point to share thoughts like that. Because I don't know, I would just hear people saying that and I thought that they were being real. And it kept me from telling my truth. And that was that I wanted to drink. And there were times in my recovery where I wanted to drink. And I remember the first time that I said that out loud. And I was going through, it was like a 4 to 5 month period. Like I was like 4 or 5 months sober. And I felt like I shouldn't want to drink. But that's the reality of my disease. And I remembered it clicking and just being like, it's okay to admit that I need help. And it's okay for me to tell people openly, I want to fucking drink right now. And I made it through it because I was vulnerable and honest. I don't think I maybe would have made it through that if not. Now, what I really felt the morning waking up and what I can kind of equate a lot of this situation to is an overwhelming feeling of guilt. And guilt is a very personal situation to me. Guilt to me is an emotion that exists, like anxiety. Like, well, is anxiety an emotion? Like sadness or shame or happiness, or it's not that I did something wrong. It's an emotion that exists that overtakes me. And I felt guilt all of my life for shit that I didn't even fucking do. Yes, I did plenty of shit that I needed to feel guilty for, but there was a lot of things that I felt guilty for that didn't make sense. And I think that is a result of my past, but I also think it's a result of somebody who's always in trouble, somebody who is constantly lying and hiding, which is how I spent my previous life. Yes, previous life. And so that emotion would follow me, just this guilty conscience that was like stuck to me. And even though I didn't actually drink in my dream, I felt guilt like harbored in my stomach, like an emotion. Like I can't describe that. Like an actual like presence of guilt existing. Not like, oh, I feel bad that blah, blah, blah. It was present in my life. I'm repeating and I don't know how to describe that better. You all, some of you know my history with guilt. And I think it's hard because it was something that I worked really, really hard to rid myself of. And I would drink over guilt. And don't get me wrong, a lot of my guilts were not made up. I think the combination of made up guilt and then also I had genuine shit that I was guilty for. Very genuine. And the combination of those two things like erupted. And that's when I would drink over my guilt. And I drink for a lot of reasons. But it was like that situation of like kind of like the wet mop again. Like trying to clean shit up through drinking. And it just like didn't make sense. So now when I feel that emotion, guilt in this very present way, I want to pretend that it isn't somewhat associated with shame. And I think that's because subconsciously I don't want to do the work it takes to clean it up. And as much as I want to heal and as much as I want to change myself, there are parts of me that are stubborn and there are parts of me that are fucking reluctant and don't want to do the work that it takes because shame and guilt are something that reoccur constantly in life. And I know that's not just for myself. And they require this work that is like a constant. And, you know, I don't think that's a result of me not doing the work correctly the first time. I think it's a result of that was embedded in me for so long to be guilty and to be wrong and to be shameful of who I am. And, you know, that's just something that when we're transforming our brains and becoming something new, becoming who we're meant to be, we have to fight things like that. And that's a personal marker of mine. Is that a personal marker of everyone? No, I don't think so at all. At all. But it definitely is a personal battle of mine. The true underlying issue, and this kind of, I think because it was like represented to me in guilt, and guilt being such a personal situation, was my relationship to pain, and pain being comforting to me. And guilt had kind of became that way too to me. And I don't like that because I have a very personal relationship to pain. And it was in a very comforting way. And you've heard me talk about it before, so I won't like indulge too much, but it's that feeling of like, I know this place so well, like that pit in my stomach where like that song where it's like darkness, my old friend, that's exactly the way pain felt to me. And I hadn't felt that way about pain in a long time. Pain is supposed to be something that's uncomfortable to me now. And I worked hard to stop making it my friend. And that is like the way that I existed, and being haunted in this way that was so comforting because it was something that knew me, and it was the only thing that knew me. And that was a result of a lot of secrets and a lot of lies I used to cover myself up. It took people out of the situation because they couldn't see it, but my pain could. And she got me and I got her. And I hadn't felt that comfort, that blanket in a long time. And I think that's what made this certain relapse dream and this certain situation so uneasy for me the following day to kind of analyze. 'Cause I'm like, why do I feel like 21-year-old Maddie again, 22-year-old Maddie? And it felt like old ways. Y'all hear me talk about, I personify a lot of things. And I think it's a good way for me to rationalize feelings that are that intense. Because to me, it is that big. And I talk about it because I know some of you understand that personifying something like pain is just realistic, because that's the way that relationship felt. And I personify alcohol in that way when I talk about the personal relationship that I truly had with it. That was my first lover. That was my everything for a long time. And it was a relationship similar to pain that I had to break. And that fight took a long time. And I think that gets discouraging from time to time. Like the way that I talk about, I rid myself of the shame and guilt and rid myself of pain. It gets exhausting. And when that comes back up, I get that feeling of free fall, of fear, and of being scared again, because that can't be who I fucking am. And it's not. And while I was going through all of this too, I had a thought that I could hear that like just came over me. And it was that I am a safe person now. I am somebody that I can trust, not my pain, not all that weird shit that I used to deal with. I am safe now in who I am. I created this, and that's something that I can trust. And that was a feeling that washed over me and granted me so much peace. And it was, again, another huge example of sobriety working for me, and all of my work kind of shining through to where I can hear it. And the truth of the matter of what is actually happening to me in this moment at hand. And it's that I'm fucking okay. And I think it was like a safe, to loop back to what I'm talking about and what I was talking about at the beginning of my life shifting sometimes and the ebb and flow. I think the whole situation that occurred was a gentle, safe shove. Not that I necessarily need this fixing so bad, but that I will never fully be healed. And that there will always be so much of me to explore, and my complex emotions, and even new ones that will exist and arise in my life. And sometimes we are simply being called to more, because we are not guilt, we are not pain, we are not shame. We are complex neural pathways that are sometimes represented in this icky way that we want to run from and continue down the same path. And that's the shove I'm talking about. Whether that was deliberately the universe and that's kind of what happened there, or my higher power, so be it, whatever, or that was just proof in myself that something was a little bit icky. And the way that I am doing things needs to change up somehow. Not that I'm doing horrible shit. Not that my life sucks. Not that I'm feeling these impending dooms in my waking life of drinking, because that's not the truth. But there's a reason that I felt that. And that's how I wanted to talk about analyzing it today, was that like, that isn't fucking me though. Just seeing that I'm comfortable where I was. And again, that stagnant energy is what is going to cause burnout in my life. And the protection of self isn't always just about the protection of my sobriety. It's a protection of my healing and my emotional sobriety. And that, again, is what is first and foremost important to me in all of this, is my emotional sobriety and the strides that I make to a better version of myself. And that end isn't in sight. That end doesn't exist. I don't graduate. I will continue my entire life doing that. And I do want that to be a representation of this, is that we never stop growing. And it's like the cheesiest thing ever, but I think it's so easy in sobriety to get comfortable in that way, and that safeness, because we've never felt that before. And it is so comforting. And whether that's sobriety for you or healing from traumas or just mental health, like it doesn't have to be sobriety, but there's this like safe plateau that we reach that we've never felt, where we're seen, heard, understood, and comfortable. Taking care of ourselves mentally, physically, and spiritually, hopefully. And we don't want to run from that. And I needed that nudge. Well, first of all, the reason that I didn't overanalyze was because the comfort of that pain being there and its presence made me feel like I should not be alone, period. So I did, as soon as I left where I was, I called my sponsor. And I told her when I picked up the phone, I said, I'm okay, but I feel like I'm supposed to tell you about this. And she made me feel better, and that was it. And we went our separate ways, and it wasn't this big grandiose thing where I had to overexpose what I'm feeling. But I had to be honest and real for a moment. So I did that. I journal. I meditated. I did all the common shit I tell y'all to do, because that's where consistency matters. That's that pattern of same day, same shit. We're going to take care of ourselves. A new mental state comes in that excites us, but for now, shit remains the same. You guys know the drill. You know what to do to be safe. I come here and I tell you all the time, pick up that fucking journal. Pick up that fucking journal and talk about it. And eventually, I swear, talking about stuff gets easier. I am not perfect about it. I recently have been reminded that it's not that easy for me. And I want to smile and put on my Southern Belle shit and stride forward like this. And it's so fucking like old Maddee behavior of me, but again, it's just a piece of me. It's a piece of who I am that I will continue to work on for a long time. It's like a personality trait, and it requires patience, and I have to have patience with myself in this relationship where she feels comfortable to speak out, where she's not being lashed at because she feels like she's not strong enough, or like she has to be overly strong and overly compensate if her strength isn't there in that moment. So I hope any of that made sense. My last few weeks, I was repeating myself, and I always say that to y'all. Do I? I don't know. Don't tell me. Don't tell me. This shit takes too long to make an edit. But I just wanted to touch on relapse dreams and the way that I combated this exact one. I think there are a lot of facets and a lot of places you can go to listen to other advice if they're reoccurring for you, or you feel like you're unsafe, you feel like you're in trouble, and you really need help with it. Relapse dreams are a very normal situation, and that's why I haven't come on to talk about them, because it's just like you can find information on that. But just remember that it's not always your subconscious screaming that it needs fucking help. Sometimes it's just what happens, and all that matters is the aftermath. Again, the only thing that matters is how we react to it. And I kept that in my mind because I was driving and I was thinking about it, and I was like, all that matters in this moment is how I react. And that, like, it is game time. And when it comes to game time, what do? Call my sponsor. What do? Protect myself and rely on my tools that I'm supposed to rely on. And that's all I can do. And I'm in this period of just constant, I cannot control this shit. This life is not of me. Period. So, hope that made sense, and I'm sorry if it didn't. I feel like I haven't talked about my personal shit in a while, so I'm taking it old school. But that's really all I have for you guys. I love you, and I hope you have a great week. Bye.